welcome to my Art of the Week, week 15. Hope everyone is well. So my first slide, it is a portrait by a British artist, and she's working today. Her name is Maggie Hamblin, and I wonder if you can tell me who the portrait is of. So that is my first question to you. Who do you think this portrait is of? Certain clues, quite distinctive. So anyway, perhaps you could remember that for when I next see you, or you could send that to me, the answer to me. Okay, so that's my first slide. My second slide is an artist, again, who's working today. His name is El Anatsui, and this particular piece is called Sacred Moon. It was made in 2007. It is absolutely huge. So it almost covers the side of a building, so you can imagine just how large this artwork is. He recently had another huge artwork that was displayed at the Royal Academy in central London, and that was outside, and it draped over the side of the Royal Academy building, so it was quite stunning to look at. I wonder what you can think it is made of. So the story I'm going to read to you about this artwork is called Bottle Top Magic, and it starts with the door opens. It's El Anutsi. Inside the big shed, lots of us assistants are working hard. Yes, it may sound like we are talking and laughing, but we are working hard. This is what El Anutsi does. He drives to the studio, he parks around the corner and walks to the door, so we cannot hear him coming. What's all this chatter, he says. Art is something spiritual. You must be quiet and concentrate. We are quiet, we say quietly. Is he angry? No, he is smiling, because art is something you do with a joyful spirit. It is hot and sweaty in here. The rainy season is coming. The sky is covered in a grey cloak. It sags down above Nuska, ready to burst, like the big sacks in the studio, bulging with bottle tops. This is what El Anutsi uses for his work. Metal bottle tops, from rum and beer and whiskey bottles. The drinks have all been drunk. The bottles have been thrown away. El Anutsi collects the metal tops. Some of us cut the tops and beat them flat. Others stitch the little shiny tongues of metal together with copper wire. We are careful not to cut our fingers on the edges. El Anutsi keeps a close eye on what we're doing. He'll point out something that we haven't seen. Look, you can do it like this, he'll say. Audio assistant, it's like conducting an orchestra of musicians, he tells us. We make blocks of wire together bottle tops like metal mats. When enough blocks are ready, we lay them on the floor. Silver, gold, blue, red striped, all the shiny colours of the bottle tops. How should they fit together? This way or that way? El Anutsi decides. Each arrangement, each pattern, has a different meaning. When he has decided, we join the blocks together in an enormous sheet. El Anutsi hasn't always lived in Nigeria. He grew up in Ghana with no less than 30 brothers and sisters. At college, he read books about African art. The books weren't written by Africans. They made it sound as if they were marks and shapes that African artists use are just pretty patterns like a Faris shirt. It was obvious these writers did not understand Ndinkra. If you'd grown up in Ghana, you would know about Ndinkra signs. You'd see them every day, painted on walls in clay pots, printed on cloth. There is a sign that looks like a wooden comb, a dufa, which means beauty. The sign, called Osman ni Nasurama, is the shining sun with a crest moon under, like a cradle. Its meaning is love and harmony. El Anutsi liked the big meanings that belong to little shapes you can print on a t-shirt or scratch on a piece of wood. He named drawings of Ndinkra, putting them together in different combination. All this time, he was noticing that roads, pathways, Marketplaces and shops, everywhere he went, were covered with rubbish that people had dropped. When he looked more closely, he realised that even the rubbish was covered in signs. They weren't they weren't Adinkra, but they meant something all the same. He picked up a bottle top. It had a blue frilly edge around a white and blue circle. In the middle of the blue circle was a silver star. He started to collect bottle tops. The names on them were like the names in legends or films: Dark Sailor, King Solomon, Makuska, Top Squad. When he collected a lot of bottle tops, he joined them together with wire. They looked like a shiny metal robe, only instead of a dinkra, they had names of alcoholic drinks. He joined thousands of bottle tops together to make a kind of cloak. If you did not look closely at what it was made from, it looked like a glittering mantle fit for a king. For many centuries, Elanutsi tells us, Europeans came to Africa and carried away our treasures. They carried away our people as slaves and traded with guns and alcohol. Look around you, he says. Africa is being filled with rubbish from all over the world. Empty bottles, milk tins. He shows us how to take this rubbish and turn it into something beautiful. For a long time, Elanutsi taught at the university in Nuska. Not many people outside Africa knew about his work. Today he is famous. We are proud to be his assistants. More and more people are asking him to make new work for exhibitions. That's what keeps us so busy. Suddenly the lights go off. It's a power cut. The air is the colour of iron. The first heavy raindrops fall. Thunder growls. Soon the electricity generator will start up and the lights will come back on. But for one moment, all around us, in the shadows, spread out on the concrete floor, the gleam of silver and gold. It is the magic treasure of Elanutsi. So, he obviously is a very famous African artist, based out in Nigeria, but originally from Ghana. Excuse me. And he found lots of these bottle tops and collected them, and now has a sort of army of assistants making this work for him. But obviously, he had the initial idea of making the work, and has used his native country sort of tradition as the patterns. Often you see them in ladies wearing cloth with these different patterns on them, and so he's used those patterns to create his artwork. So perhaps you could ask your parents or anyone who looks after you, or anyone who is from Ghana or from Nigeria, if they can show you any of the African patterns that they're aware of, and perhaps you can see if there are any like the ones that Elanutsi is using. Okay, so that is my art of the week. My next slide is this one. This is an artist who she basically uses stamps as a way of making art, and if I just find her name is Carmela Gross, and she's created 80 different stamps of squiggles, zigzags, curved lines and other marks and gestures. Using one of them at a time, she fills large sheets of paper with single shapes stamped over and over again. So this work was made in 1978, and it's just called Stamp. And there are lots of other works very similar to this. Ones with sort of like a knocked over M, and so she just uses stamps to create her work. So it's repeating patterns, and I know that we've done quite a lot of printing and making lots of different patterns. So maybe that's something that you could think about when you're looking at this work, the things that you've done before. So what you could do is to try and create a work like this is that you could make your own stamp. What you need is to cut out a simple shape or line out of a little bit of craft foam, or anything that you call, or maybe a little bit of rubber that you might have at home, anything that you can use to have a raised surface that you would be able to put ink on, and repeat a pattern, so something that will hold ink well. Obviously, if you're cutting out a shape, you need to get an adult to help you, or just to supervise what you're doing. So what you need is you need some ink or paint, either would do, some form of craft foam, maybe a block, or you could use the thick lid of a jar, some scissors and a piece of paper. And what you need to do is to, if you've got the craft foam, then obviously you can very carefully peel off the backing, because usually they're adhesively backed, so you can peel it off and then attach it to the block that you're going to use. If you haven't got any craft foam, that's not a problem. Find a material that will, a bit of plastic or something that is in a sort of foam material, and stick it onto the top of a used lid of a jar. So you might need to leave it to dry for a little bit. And then once you've got this shape, you can start to stamp with it. So you could either use an ink pad, so pressing the stamp into an ink pad, and then pressing that firmly down on the paper. So you could choose the level of pressure that you put on, so that'll affect how the print looks. You could make marks close together, you could have them far apart. If you haven't got ink, then you could use some paint. So you could put your print block into the paint, or use a sponge. A sponge might be better, actually. So if you put a sponge onto your print block, then you're not going to get too much paint on. And then just use that and stamp it onto a piece of paper. So you could make different arrangements, you could make different patterns with your stamp. You can create different stamps. You could create one stamp, and then if that's successful, then you could create a different shape for a stamp, and you could attach a new shape to a different block, or add a shape to another side of the first block, and alter your first stamp by adding new shapes and lines. Also think about what happens if you rotate your stamp, or just layer it, so layering the marks together. So see what you come up with. Perhaps think about using different colours for your stamp. If you've done two stamps, you could use alternate colours. Layer it, put them close together, far apart. Just create your own repeating pattern, and see what you can come up with. I'd love to see any of your designs, any of your work, and look forward to sharing with you next week my Art of the Week, week 16. Okay, take care.